Okay, so at this point now, it needs more than what I did here. I just ain't got the time to like do a bunch of details. You know what I mean? Like I like the way that that turned out. There's things I don't like, but there's only so much time. So I need to move on to the next things here. So, like I didn't really do anything with his face. I should have done more, but I just don't have the time. So, next, after you do this layer, what you'd want to do is a new layer at a higher level. So basically, this is going to be your max. Just be aware, the higher level you go, the more difficult it's going to be. It's going to run slower. It's going to be more likely to crash. All that other stuff. So I'm going to go to level 6 here. Generally, like I said, you can usually get to 6 or 7. If you probably have a supercomputer, you might be able to get to 8. Well, actually, the thing is, it actually depends on the model, right? So the complexity of the model. So he's not overly complex, but if you have something that has a lot of grooves and stuff, and it was a lot of geometry to begin with, these subdivision levels will get pretty heavy after a while. So you can see it's still trying to unmap my model at the higher resolution. I was kind of hoping to be able to get to 7, but now I'm starting to think maybe 6 might be where I'm going to end it. So we'll see. Okay, so it got to 6, and we're at 120, or no, 1,260,000. Is that where we're at? It's actually still pretty responsive. So I think I'm going to go for a second one. I'm going to hit Shift D again, and we'll see how it goes. I did save this beforehand, though, just in case it does crash. But the higher you go, the more likely it's going to be to crash. So you're going to want to make sure that you save it. So I'm going to pause this, actually, and then if it's successful, I'll see you on the other side. It was complete. Let's see. It's not. It's okay. So at this point, you can do like surface details. So like I said, you might be at a level 6 or a level 7 at this point. But we'll rename this one, and we're gonna either call it like texture or surface. I'm just gonna call it surface. This is stuff that absolutely does not affect. So these last two do not affect the silhouette. They're not gonna break the silhouette. But they'll add like surface details that you can see. They add sort of textural elements and such. Okay, so here's where you could do things where you would add basically the minutia of detail. Oh, did it just crash on me? See, this is the kind of... Oh, no, it didn't. Okay. It's gonna, though. Okay. So, yeah, I'm not going to have a lot of stuff to do with this. So I'm going to do sharp, or sculpt. And then let's do stencil. Or let me see, stamp. See, let's do stamp. I'm going to do this and see if we can do some follicles. So let's click. Okay, that didn't really do too much. All right, let's make this a little bit bigger. Just going to... There we go. Okay. So you can see it's doing that, right? So that's pretty sweet. It's giving a very rough edge on the outside, which is kind of disappointing. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna change the stencil of this. I gotta undo it. All right. So you can see this is getting to the point though where it's going so slow that it might not even be worth it to work with. Okay. And you can, I don't know if you can see, I got little dots here, like where it's. See how it's doing this? There's like something weird going on. So that starts to happen because it's just getting too high. So I'm going to do my fall off, and I'm going to do the normal fall off. Let's go back to stamp. I'm going to do it that. Then what I'm going to do is I want to draw these follicles out, right? So I'm going to randomize it, and then we're going to take the stamp spacing, and I'm going to go up to like 50% roughly, and that should probably be fine. And then I can click and drag, and then you'll see it will randomly put them in there. But you see, those are pretty big. I mean, that's not that great. So let's take the strength down a whole bunch. Okay. And let's make this smaller too, so that they're just smaller to look at. And let's see. There we go. Okay. And then I can draw these in here. And so you can see there's his like follicles. I don't know if you can see them. See it? Right? So that are his pores, I should say. Right? And then what I'm going to do now is, right now it's on invert function. Let's go ahead and do the opposite. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but let's try making it come out a little bit and see if we can get kind of like maybe fuzzy looking stuff. And this gives us more of a stubbly look. kind of weird though, because it's like pushing it in at the same time. But you can see that's kind of doing the opposite where it's making it come out. So kind of have to make some decisions on what you want that to look like. I don't understand why it's being so rough there. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then that's a little bit better, making it bigger. For some reason it was... And I'm just going to kind of instead do some kind of coming out too. So that way it has more of a... Let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. All right. So now it looks like he has a little bit of stubble. It's not as visible here. Quite frankly, honestly, the resolution of our texture maps are probably going to be lower than what this is. But you can see it looks pretty... I'm going to smooth that out. Smooth this stuff in there, so just a little bit. All right. So you get kind of the idea. I'm just going to smooth that out. All right. So that I can add like textural stuff. So that's that stamp. There's also this one here, which is really good for like small wrinkles. I'm not going to randomize it. I'm not going to put stamp spacing on it. I am going to invert it. And this is really good for doing like smaller cuts and stuff. So, oops, we need to make it much weaker. Let's see. That's a little bit better. And let's make it weaker yet. So what are we at? 0.03. Let's do 0.01. It's not working as well there, but I can kind of show you maybe down like in the neck and stuff. I like to use it. So if you kind of cut it across back and forth on itself, you can get, it's really struggling here. You can get some more like minor details, like scratchy looking stuff. So, but it's a good way of kind of breaking up an area, and it adds kind of almost like damage to it. Although it's not working that well right now. I think just because it's chugging so hard. And then we can also, so that's one thing you can do is try to use these different stamps and stencils here. So you might find these useful. I'm going to turn it off now. That's stamps, all right. And then we have these stencils here. Now, you can use your own as well. So if you want to bring in a picture, you can use that as a stencil. But for instance, let's say, what do we have here? That one. Let's say I wanted to have like a leathery look on my belt, right? So for the sculpting, I could go down here. And so I'm going to click on this here, which is like a leather. It's on. I like to use this as well, use tiles. And what that does is it actually repeats it. Because if you don't use tiles, what will happen is, so you'll see over here it says S. So you do S to make it big and small. Middle, so this is right mouse button, middle mouse button, left mouse button rotates. Okay. So, but if when you go to the edge, it won't show up on the edges. Like you'll end up with a border there. I don't know if you can see it, and that kind of stinks. Okay. So I like to use tiles. The only problem is that if it's something that it's not tiled, which this texture is not, but it's random enough that it might not be a huge deal. I'm gonna go back here and turn this back off from invert, and then let's make it just a touch stronger. Let's do 0.02. And now what I can do is just paint this across here. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm drawing through that image, and it's placing that in there, right? And so if I hit Q, I can turn it on and off. But you can see it added that texture there. I mean, it's not a great example. I feel like it would look better the other way. I'm going to try drawing it inverted. Yeah, I think inverted actually looks a little bit better. Okay, but you get kind of the idea. And this can be used for all sorts of things. Like, watch, if you use this one, I mean, I don't know why you would use it on him, but maybe he's like a steel driving man. I don't know. So I go like this, and then you could paint these, paint these right onto him, right? And that's kind of neat. So if you find like a cool texture, something that makes sense for what you have, this even works. I think there's even like a fur one in here. Let me see which one. Is it this one? It's hard to see them. But there's all sorts of different ones in here. You can find some online. But basically, you can draw through these stencils in order to get like interesting textures and such. Okay, so there's stencils and stamps that will allow you to basically draw these onto the figure, and they're particularly really useful for this last one. That is the surface detail. Okay, I am going to probably undo all these. But I just wanted to show you what those are. So feel free to use them. You can see there's other options here. Just be aware, like if you're over here and like, oh, I want my options for my stencil, you just gotta click. You just gotta click back on it. So like if I click here, I get my options here. But if I click back on this, yeah, off, on. Oh, you know why? Because that's a stencil. So if I'm on here and like, oh, but I go to grab or something, you just got to click back on it, and you'll get those options again. So just be aware that that's what you got to do, and you got to turn them off too. Oh, and to add your own stencil or stamp is this button here. So see this little button? You click on this, and you can add one. All right. So you just add. So just find a picture. You can draw a picture if it's like a pattern that you want to put on there, and then you can import it and use that to paint through or to use as a stamp. Whatever you want to do. All right. But that's the last thing you want to do is basically add those textural details. And that's the really, really tight stuff, you know. And besides even using these, I could just continue on with what we were doing before. Make sure both of these are off, you know, do the sculpt, go to my fall off, make it sharp, keep it inverted. And then I could where's my pen? Where'd you go, pen? I don't know where it is, but, I could, you know, bring this up a little bit, bring this down a little bit, and then I could cut little lines and stuff, you know, make more specific, I'm at 0.02, let's say, make more specific like scratches and things, you know what I mean? So you can play around with that too, because now I have more details at my disposal. All right. But yeah, there you go. So play around with those. You can see there's some other tools here you can try playing around with too. You probably don't need too many of them, but just they're there. All right. This will be the last thing you're going to do as far as sculpting. So once this is done, then you're done sculpting, and the next thing to do is to go into painting. All we put down were base colors. Okay, so the next video will be actually starting to paint.